Which impact adapters? Which ones don't break? Stick with us and we'll let you know. I'm Tim Johnson. You're watching Shop Tool Reviews. This has to be in the top 3 of the common questions asked on the YouTube comments as well as our social media video comments. And that is, which impact adapter are you using? Because typically people break their impact adapters. And when I say impact adapters, I'm talking about 1/4 inch hex impact driver adapters so that you can use 3/8 and 1/2 inch sockets or even 1/4 inch sockets. But most of the time you're typically grabbing that 3/8 to 1/4 inch adapter so that you can, remove lug nuts or something like that. Now, these tools, these impact drivers, are not made to remove lug nuts, but we've all done it. They're also not made to remove those larger fasteners. But again, we've all done it and we have to do it from time to time. Well, we found some that work really well, but really we weren't sure of which ones actually worked and which ones didn't, so we set out to find out. So we did the typical. We've got the Makita bits in here, the new XPS bits. We've got Harbor Freight, both the Bauer model and the Warrior model. Now they also had a Hercules model that's supposed to be better, but they looked identical to the Bauer and they were $1 more, so we just bought the Bauers. We've also got a DeWalt bit in here. We've got a Husky bit in here, as well as a Milwaukee and a Ryobi bit as well. So we got 7 bits that we tried. 7 different adapters. Now, let me quit talking. We'll go over to the test rig. We'll use these things. We'll see which one of them break and which ones actually handle the test. Okay, we're embarking on a journey to find the best, well, maybe not the best, the strongest, well, maybe not the strongest in the way that we use these, the strongest adapter for your impact driver. Now, when we're testing impact drivers and we're using big sockets like these 33 millimeters here, like we'll use in just one moment, people always ask us, how in the world do your adapters hold up? And we have snapped a bunch and we found out which ones are the best. Now I could pick out, or I said the best again, I want to clarify. I shouldn't say the best for the application in which we use it, because if you're screwing a lot of lags in the wood, it might react differently. So just understand that. We'll explain that later. But anyway, so what we have here is we have the Ryobi, this is the Husky, the Milwaukee, the DeWalt, the Makita, this is the Warrior from Harbor Freight, and this is the Bauer from Harbor Freight. And there was also a Hercules, which looked identical to the Bauer, just had a blue strip on it and cost $1 more, and I doubt there's any difference whatsoever. We thought 2 from Harbor Freight would be plenty. And if you think the Hercules will be stronger, well, you can test it yourself. Anyway, let's get started here. What we're going to do, we're going to test each one of these, see their failure point. We're going to be using the Milwaukee 2853 impact driver, one of the strongest, that's out there. So figured that would be a good test or a good subject to use. Let's get started. I'm going to move pretty fast here since we are going to be doing a lot of repetitive testing. I've got my magnet tray here, and we're going to start with the Ryobi, then go to the Husky, then Milwaukee, then DeWalt, Makita, the Warrior, and then the Bauer. So I'll try to stay in that same rotation each time so that we can move fast through here. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and tighten all these to 100 foot-pounds, break them free, go to 150, 200, 250, until we start seeing some breakage. I think the first few may just sail through, and if all of them are getting through, I may just fast forward through all those just for you to see, and then start slowing down once we hit some breakages. Ryobi. Husky. As we expected, they all sailed through the 100 foot-pound test with no problems whatsoever. We expected that. What we're going to do, we're going to change that up a bit. We're going to take our torque gun and then start at 150 now, and we're going to go run all the way up. Use the same adapter and run all the way through from starting at 150, 200, 250, 300, 350, 400, and 450 foot-pounds. See if there's any breakage, then run to the next one. Okay, what we have first is the Ryobi. So we're going to chalk up the Ryobi. And it is a 3/8 drive, so we're going to have an adapter that's welded onto the 33mm socket because you can't get a 33mm in a 3/8 drive. Anyway, and I really didn't want to test the 1/2" drive adapters because I think the most used would be that 3/8 drive. What we're starting with is 150 foot-pounds. We're going to do 150, 200, 250, 300, 350, 400, and 450 foot-pounds. We'll do it all with the Ryobi, see if it holds up. We're in speed 3 on the Milwaukee. We do have a full battery. Let's go. 150. 200. So we snapped at 200 foot-pounds. It was starting to break free, but then it snapped it. So Ryobi is good for 200 foot-pounds. Okay, so the Ryobi broke at trying to break free 200 foot-pounds, so we just retightened these two at 150 and 200, and we're going to move on to the Husky. 150 for the Husky. 200 for the Husky. 250 for the Husky. 300. We've broken free 300 foot-pounds. Now we're on to 350 with the Husky. Okay, now move on to 400 foot-pounds. By the way, not only is this Husky a strong contender, but it has been beat to death already, and you can barely read the Husky name still on there. But this is the one we use in the shop all the time. This is the one also that I think should win the fight. I tell people all the time, they ask us, how in the world do you get impact adapters to hold up? And I tell them the Husky. They don't believe me, but that's the best we've seen as far as the testing that we do. So moving on, 400 foot-pounds. There's 400. Now let's move on to 450. 450 foot-pounds. And there's 450. Quite warm, but still holding up. So now we're going to move on. We're going to let that rest at 450. And we'll move on to another one to make sure that all of them can do 450. Okay, so now moving on. We've done the Ryobi, we've done the Husky. Let's move on to the Milwaukee. And 150 foot-pounds. 200. 250. 300. 350. 400 foot-pounds for the Milwaukee. Okay, so we had a thermal cutout on the Milwaukee, pushing it too hard, so it shut down on us at the 400 foot-pound mark. Let's get back into it here. So 400 foot-pounds for the Milwaukee adapter. Got 400, now let's roll on to 450. Back to thermal cutout. Okay, we shifted the camera a little. 450 foot-pounds for the Milwaukee adapter. And there's 450. By the way, that was just the socket falling off. The adapter's still good. So Milwaukee and Husky have made it to 450 so far. Let's move on to the DeWalt. Okay, so let's get started again. We've got the DeWalt adapter in here now. We're going to start at 150 foot-pounds and go up from there. Okay, so that makes 3 now. The DeWalt, the Husky, and the Milwaukee have all made it past 450 foot-pounds. Okay, now we're moving on to the Makita. Makita impact adapter. Here we go. Starting at 150. 200. So it did 150, it did 200, would not do 250. Okay, now we're moving on to the Warrior from Harbor Freight. 150 foot-pounds. The Warrior from Harbor Freight did all the way up to 450 as well. So now we've got 4 still in the fight. Okay, now we're down to the Bower from Harbor Freight. We just did the Warrior from Harbor Freight. Now we're going to do the Bower, and we'll start at 150 foot-pounds. Okay, so there's another one. So we've got both Harbor, whoa, that's warm. We got both Harbor Freights, the Warrior and the Bower. We have the Husky, the Milwaukee, and the DeWalt still in the fight. Okay, so we're down to 5. 2 have been eliminated, but we still have 5 left. We're going to start with the DeWalt, and now what I've done, I've torqued these 5 fasteners, these 5 nuts to 500 foot-pounds. So they've all done 450. So I've gone ahead and torqued all 5 of these with 500. I'll start with the DeWalt, then I'll move to the Milwaukee and so forth. Here we go, 500 foot-pounds with the DeWalt adapter. And by the way, still have a full battery. We've been making sure we keep a charged one on there. So here we go. Okay, that's what I was afraid of. Now what we've gotten into is basically our impact wrench is not delivering enough power to break free that 500 foot-pounds, at least after 10 seconds of hammering. So now I feel like I'm creating a problem in itself. So I'm going to try a couple of the other impact drivers just to make sure that that's not our weak spot, which I'm pretty sure the Milwaukee delivers one of the best out there. So we'll up the battery on some of the others. We'll try a couple of those, and then we'll move to an impact wrench if we have to. Okay, we got good news and bad news and more bad news. The bad news, number 1, is that the Ryobi failed at 150 foot-pounds and the Makita failed at 250 foot-pounds. The good news is that some of them actually went through all the testing. The bad news is a lot of them went through all the testing. So we actually hit a point where we hit after 450 foot-pounds when all of these bits actually made it through, and when I say all of them, the Milwaukee, the DeWalt, the Bauer from Harbor Freight, the Warrior from Harbor Freight, as well as the Husky from Home Depot. Now let me mention something on the Husky. This Husky tools adapter has been through many tests, and this is the bit or the adapter that everybody asks, what adapter are you using? Because we break ours all the time. We used to break ours all the time too because we were using other bigger name bits, other bigger name adapters, and we would break them. And we came across the Husky Tools simple, cheap adapter. And so that's what we found that actually lasted. And as you can see, even trying to remove 500 foot-pounds, it did break free 450 foot-pounds, which it does all the time. And it even handled the maximum power that the Milwaukee impact driver would put out. Now, here was the problem. We got to a point with the 500 foot-pound tightened nuts or tightened fasteners that they wouldn't break free anymore. I think we got one of them to break free, but I think that may have been just a luck of the draw, if you will. Maybe even two of them, but regardless, they all withheld up to 500 foot-pounds of force, but the impact driver would no longer break them free. Now, we could have moved to an impact wrench, but I think that would have totally changed the test, and we'd have had to take an adapter down to a 1/4-inch socket that then went around this, and I would imagine we'd probably either strip the socket or break the tool, and we would be engaging it in a different spot. Anyway, I just think we would have taken the whole purpose of this out of context. My point is, these bits that withstood this are really taking whatever beating you can throw at it with your impact driver. Because the Milwaukee is definitely top of the heap. Now, we did try another impact driver that's a little bit stronger. I can't mention which one that is. I may be able to at a later date. But regardless, it still withstood all the power we could throw at it. So here's my point. Any of these top 5, I think you're doing great at buying them. Now, let me also point out, I think I mentioned this before, maybe during the testing, that using this in the manner that we did, of removing big nuts and bolts, removing lug nuts, is a different manner than saying driving lags into wood, because the type of impact is different. That's a softer type of impact when you've got that wood that's a little more forgiving on that fastener. And that's a lot of times where these torsion zones come into play, if you will. Now, the idea of these torsion zones, where they kind of neck them down, is supposed to actually provide some torsion or provide some twist so they're not just breaking. Do they work? I don't know. We've done some slow motion stuff and really haven't seen that torsion zone work. But again, we're not using, $20,000 cameras to do that. But we haven't seen it. Maybe they do work. My point is, all of these held up. Now, let me also point out, this is the Milwaukee Shockwave adapter that came in the new Shockwave adapter sockets that we got. This is supposed to be coming out this year, maybe in a month or so. But anyway, I know some of the older Shockwave stuff, they did have problems breaking them. This one held up, but again, it came out of our brand new kit. So I'm not going to say that you may not find some older ones that may break, and they may not be any different, but I heard a lot of negative feedback, if you will, off the older adapters, but this new one held up quite well. And another thing, when we were using these, and in fact, this one specifically, after hammering on it for 10, 20, 30 seconds, this was over 170 degrees. So these things get quite hot when you're using them in the manner that we did. Hey, check them out for yourselves. These are like $3 adapters, $4 adapters. You can buy these kits for $3.99, $4.99, $5.99. There were some that I didn't test, like Cobalt, because the only way I could buy it was in a 20-piece kit with, with 40 other bits or 20 other bits, whatever. And I thought, you know what, I'm not going to do that. But if they offered the packs, that's what I bought, and that's what we tested. So check them out for yourselves. Also, keep track of us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And by the way, if you got a question about this video or wanted to see something different or wanted to see some more info, let us know in the comments. If you hated this video, by all means, give us a thumbs down, but let us know in the comments why. Have a great day and keep smiling.